Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at the Connected Places Catapult Innovation Hub for Portsmouth. My name is Richard Wigley. I am the team lead of the SME Innovation Support team here at Connected Places Catapult, and I'll be hosting and guiding you through today's session. The eagle-eyed amongst you may notice that this isn't actually happening in Portsmouth in a venue as it was supposed to be, but is online. Unfortunately, due to the rail strikes, we haven't been able to rearrange and deal with the event in person, so we've done the next best thing and taken it online. Obviously, it's not quite the same as being in person. The casual conversations, the serendipitous meetings over lunch or coffee aren't going to happen, but I think we've still got a good selection of panels and speakers today who can tell you more about building an innovative company and scaling an innovative company in Portsmouth. So just to quickly run through the agenda, we have the keynote from Jane Lemaire from Portsmouth City Council, Professor Jeremy Howells from Portsmouth University, and then my colleague from our academic engagement team, Nick Loke, is going to be talking about innovation exchange with a panel. I'll then be chairing a sustainable scaling SME panel later before we finish up just before 4 o'clock. A few little bits of technical housekeeping to go with. This session will be recorded and it will be available after the session, available through our channels. Please use the Q&A to ask questions. We have left the Q&A open, and any questions that you want, please put them in the Q&A and we will field them and make sure they are asked to the appropriate people during the panels and the sessions. The chat isn't available for everyone, but I believe that it can send direct messages to us. We will also share the slides, sorry, at the end of the session, so you can look through at the links and the email addresses for the people who have been speaking and contact them later. Next slide, please. So welcome to the Connected Places Catapult Innovation Hub. There is no right way to do this welcome introduction. I've tried a number of different ways and it's always a little bit out of sync and it always feels a little bit like I'm in the wrong order. So this is the order I'm going to do it in. Connected Places Catapult. We are the UK's innovation accelerator for cities, transport and place leadership. Place leadership is especially important because that is the catalyst for this particular event. We have got a really elegant and well put together couple-of-minute video, which I think explains who we are and what we do far better and far quicker than I ever can. So if we can go to the next slide, please. We'll have the video and I'll come back in a second. Thanks.
For millennia, cities have been places where bright ideas spark. From the earliest riverside trading posts that turned into today's sprawling megacities in the digital global economy. Cities can create positive experiences for people, always connected by technology. And when connected places work well, it's good for people and the planet. But making a connected place succeed is hard. There's loads of stakeholders, businesses, regulators and community groups who want to be involved across every mode of transport, every type of building, the infrastructure that underpins them, and the data and digital platforms that connect them. All of this is needed to help people, communities, neighbourhoods and local businesses to prosper. Now, more than ever, we need our connected places to succeed. We are in a climate emergency. Rapid urbanisation means 3/4 of us will be living in a city by 2050. And new technologies are revolutionising the way that we live, the way we work, and the way we travel. creating fantastic opportunities for innovation, jobs and growth. At Connected Places Catapult, we connect people, places and businesses for a future of sustainable growth and prosperity. We are the UK's innovation accelerator for cities, transport and place leadership. We are trusted across government, industry and academia, connecting new technologies, business models and investment opportunities. So join with us and be better connected for a future of sustainable growth and prosperity.
Thanks. Hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into who Connected Places Catapult are. We are one of 9 Catapult centres across the UK, with over 50 sites across all the centres. The technological ecosystems we support are rail and stations, port and maritime, air mobility and airports, homes and housing, integrated infrastructure, the things that join us all together, and place leadership. I'll come on to what place leadership means in a second, but I just wanted to present this rather busy slide, but this is the work that we do within the SME support area of the business. We work across all of the ecosystems, and we like to say that we work from PhD to PLC. We can support innovators, startups, SME leaders and scale-up leaders across their growth from the very beginning of an idea right the way through to global exporting, where we help take people around the world to grow their collaborative R&D and also to export to new markets and new countries. We particularly deliver programs of business support, engagement activities with industry buyers, regulators and large companies. We also run a number of funding programs across different areas of transport, most notably the Transport Research Innovation Grant Programme, and we also develop funding. We also deliver funding through our Innovate UK Edge RTO grants. We have as well a series of investor days where we run both traditional investor days where SMEs and startups can pitch to a room full of investors. We also run reverse, which is where a bunch of investors pitch to a room full of SMEs about their services and the support they offer. We also have a comprehensive range of accelerator programs across all of our different technology ecosystems that can help develop technology and bring vital demonstration opportunities to innovators and entrepreneurs, as well as international missions. Recently, we took a group of SMEs and small businesses to the South Summit in Brazil, where international collaboration was forged. One of the businesses is actually now working in Mexico on developing technology to help with water resilience. So really successful there. Next slide, please. Of course, there is no correct way to this. So now I'm coming on to what are innovative places and what is place leadership. Innovative places are something that our place leadership program through the Innovative Place Leadership Academy has been helping to develop over the last year. Through the Innovative Places Leadership Academy, or IPLA, our teams worked with 3 cities over the last year: Hull, Aberdeen and Portsmouth, across a range of activities to help local leaders understand the conditions, understand some success methods, and help to develop innovative places. Next slide, please. The participants from Portsmouth included representatives from Portsmouth City Council, Maritime Enterprise, Maritime UK Solent and Portsmouth University. And the activities that the participants took part in included workshops on foreign direct investment, how to build coalitions and convene ecosystems, and sustaining and scaling innovative places. They worked with and had discussions and talks with place leaders from places as far as Mexico and Vienna. As part of the leadership program, this event is being put on to engage with local innovators and entrepreneurs to help understand the landscape of the support that's available around Portsmouth to help grow innovative and scale innovative businesses. Next slide, please. So pretty much on time, I think. I would like to introduce to you Jane Lemaire, who will be giving a keynote speech. Jane is the Head of Economic Development and Skills at Portsmouth City Council and was one of the participants on the IPLA programme last year.
Hello. Hopefully my slides are going to move on shortly and everyone can hear me. I'm delighted to join everyone here today to talk a little bit more about Portsmouth, about the offer that we have for our engaging with businesses and the sort of work that we're doing and how we as a local authority can help. Obviously, you heard a little bit about our project that we were working on, and that really brought together some really experienced partners to really focus on how we're supporting our businesses. And that's a key priority for everyone that's involved. So you'll excuse me as I mention some of those wonderful colleagues as we go through this short presentation. I wanted to start with Imagine Portsmouth because I think it's a real strength for the city in terms of the way that we come together and have direction. So for those of you that have not heard about Imagine Portsmouth, it is a city vision. It was put together back in 2018, 2019, just before the pandemic. And we brought together around 2,500 individuals representing our residents, our voluntary and community sector, our businesses and stakeholders to provide a really strong direction for what we wanted out of the city as we move forward. And obviously those priorities are, as we might expect, looking for a thriving economy, a healthy and happy city, full of culture and creativity, easy to travel, and having that green travel option is of particular importance in the city of Portsmouth. And obviously that focus of lifelong learning, pulling us together towards an agenda that gives us the vision of Imagine Portsmouth. And when you get the slides, I have given some details of the Imagine Portsmouth website if you haven't had a look, because that's part of an evolving agenda that is very much run by the city, not the local authority, and helps us all to focus on what we're doing and to give us a context in which we work and why we work as such a united front in the city. Can I get you to move on to the next slide, please? Wonderful. Can I get you to press on the video, please, which comes from our Invest Portsmouth website? And hopefully it'll appear like magic. Fabulous, thank you. I hope you'll excuse me the vanity of that piece. Brilliant, yeah, thank you. If you can just bring those pieces up. What I really wanted to do by sharing that promotional video that's now going to play obsessively with our funky music, the obsessional video that's really is about celebrating Portsmouth. And I think that's one thing that's really important for us to do in the first instance. We are the waterfront city. We are the only island city in the UK, and we have some unique potential as well as some restrictions. But it's really important to focus on what is already there and what is going on. And when we're looking at the work that we're doing and being open for business, all of those things that were coming up in the video are of such key importance to us and often dominate the way that our businesses develop. What I really wanted to celebrate in particular was our provision of sites, particularly for our businesses to work in. For those of you that are familiar with the city and Lakeside, which used to be, and in fact still is, the IBM headquarters, which housed thousands of people, when IBM took a different slant and moved everyone remotely, which was way before the last few years. As a local authority, we took on the site and turned it into an enormous business centre where we have extremely high occupancy, well over about 92% on a regular basis, that provides a long-term home for a whole host of businesses, including the likes of IBM, Babcock, Lead Forensics, colleagues from our NHS, Science On, Media Talent, Wiggle, a lot of our international as well as our local names that have really developed there. As a local authority, we also run a suite of enterprise centres across the city. We already have 3 well-established centres that have been running for many years, offering short-term rental opportunities for our businesses of various different sizes. And we open our 4th site next month, subject to all the electrics being done, which are literally being done now, and our first tenant moves in. And that will be City Buildings, which is on the north end of Commercial Road. That's part of our meanwhile use of property that's going to be part of the redevelopment over the next 5 to 10 years. But once again, increasing the opportunities for our businesses to establish short-term rents, and subject to some negotiations on building on another area in the city, we'll look to open our 5th by the end, hopefully, of this year. And of course, alongside all of that, we also have partners accommodating our businesses. So we have some fantastic business communities provided by the University of Portsmouth, and I'm sure that my colleagues, when they talk later on the panel, might refer to those great centres in Technopole, Halpin House, or the rather unique Cell Block, which is actually in our historic dockyard. And within all of this, we're also in a culture of very significant regeneration. And if you're not familiar with the regeneration work that's going on across the city, then I can only encourage you to go to our Home of Portsmouth City Centre website, which will show you all of our regeneration plans and encourage you to look at those to feedback and to be aware of what we're doing, which we hope will significantly regenerate the top end of Commercial Road and down our retailing element, really changing the way that we're using that space, looking very much at green travel, increasing our connectivity and providing different spaces for our businesses, retailers and households across the coming years. Can I get you to move on to the next slide, please? Marvellous. Always my favourite slide to use, so my apologies for the many people in the audience that know me quite well and may have seen this slide once or twice. Obviously, in here we get to celebrate so much of our positivities, and whether you're one of the 7,810 businesses that are already in Portsmouth, or whether you're looking to be part of the startup generation or to move and grow within the city, we hope that what we offer as a local authority, as a city and as a wider place really provides everything that you need to grow your businesses. And that includes Portsmouth as one of the largest investors in solar panels and solar power across the city, both within our Portsmouth International Port, within Lakeside and across our housing stock. We have massive developments within our full fibre network by City Fibre as they move across the city, providing better connectivity to support individuals and businesses and address many of those challenges. And we have a thriving visitor economy, which we hope provides a real balance in the way that we're working and living in and around the city. Can I ask you to move on to the next slide, please? But it's more about what we do for you. Can I get you to press on and add the text? Because we shouldn't have a slowdown in it, but it's obviously doing it today for me. You have to love technology, don't you? Oh, sorry, yeah, thank you. So what we offer as a local authority and as a group of partnerships is the strength within that business support. And it is very much a case of not just working in isolation. And we saw that within this wonderful project within Connected Places Catapult, but also within a lot of the work that we do. So as a local authority, we have a business helpline. We offer one-to-one support with one of our advisors to help you with business concerns, startup advice and guidance. And we offer that through an email or through a phone line to provide that support. If you aren't already signed up for our business bulletin, then I urge you to go onto the Portsmouth City Council website and sign up for the business bulletin, which we send out roughly every 2 weeks. And in particular, what we promote in there are networking events, business opportunities, funding, and we try and celebrate the successes that we see across the city as supporting for our businesses. So can I encourage you to, a call to action for you to sign up for the business bulletin before the day is out. On our website, you'll also see the PCC Cost of Living Hub, which is designed to support residents, and we have a section on there specifically for businesses, recognising the challenging economic climate that we're delivering in currently. And then we support a range of projects. Let me go networking opportunities first of all. So as a local authority, we have a B2B networking that we run on the third Thursday, moving across venues in the city, providing a business networking opportunity and a talk on different topics. So today, if you were lucky enough to join them at the Crease Hotel, you would have heard from our colleagues at Portsmouth International Port talking about how they can work with businesses and the import-export opportunities that they can support through Freeport. We also run First Friday, which is held at one of our enterprise centres, which offers a free opportunity for business networking. And we promote a whole range of networking opportunities that are run by partners and individual businesses in and around Portsmouth to give as many opportunity for our businesses to engage as possible. Shaping Portsmouth is such an important key partner for us. Shaping Portsmouth is a membership organisation that works in and around Portsmouth. We have over 43 patrons and numerous partners and associates who work together across our 3 pillars of education, business and community. The whole purpose of Shaping Portsmouth is to bring together individuals to improve the opportunities for businesses in the cities, to promote supply chain work, and to coordinate our social value piece so that we can have the most impact and really reach out across some of those challenges that we can face as businesses around supply chain, around our young people coming through in terms of developing and aspiring people to work within our industries. And that coordinated approach, which includes wonderful partners like the university, is absolutely key to the way that Portsmouth works. And again, if you aren't already signed up with the Shaping Portsmouth newsletter, I encourage you to get involved with that, where again, they're doing their best to share a whole range of business support tools through their regular newsletter. And as we move through the next month, we'll be talking about some more partnership work that we as a local authority will be doing with Shaping Portsmouth to increase the practical support for our businesses as we move through some difficult and challenging economic times where we really want to promote acceleration and growth for individual businesses. We also have amazing organisations like Portsmouth Creates, which supports particularly our creative industries, really focusing on those individuals and small businesses, as well as larger organisations that work in and around the city, around creativity. And Portsmouth Hive has some fantastic work going on around our voluntary and community sector, which we also support within our business networks, either as important partners. So many of our organisations are CIC's, community interest companies, but also in terms of working with them to help us all achieve our shared goals. And as a local authority, we're very proud to have a range of twinning and sister city arrangements. We actually have 11 formal agreements in place. And you might be asking yourself why I'm bothering to talk about this in a business context. Because whilst we enjoy the ceremonial side that might impact on us culturally, what we're really focused on now is increasing those business opportunities. So at the beginning of the year, we welcomed our newest sister city arrangement with Halifax, Nova Scotia, to the UK. They worked with us and we hosted a range of visits to businesses and hosted a wonderful networking evening where we invited businesses who have a specific interest in working with Halifax, Nova Scotia, to join us, to network with our delegation that we're over, and to make those connections. And we're working hard with our business community to try and facilitate those relationships as we move forward. We're really excited that some of the businesses that came into that event in January have already fostered and arranged some really strong relationships. And we encourage you to reach out if that's part of your target audience and see how we can facilitate the soft landing. We've taken that further quite recently with our very oldest sister city agreement, actually a twinning arrangement with Duisburg in Germany, who came over and saw us in May. They're really keen to promote the same arrangements and to facilitate soft landings in Germany. So if any of our businesses are particularly interested in working with Duisburg in Germany, then we're happy to try and facilitate that. Again, if you want to have a look at the different arrangements that we run with our international relationships, I'd encourage you to go to our website, have a look at that and see what we can do. Can I ask you to move on, please? So obviously, one of our biggest sells is the fact that we are part of the UK's global gateway. So that's part of Solent Freeport. And in Portsmouth, we have the incredible three-way offer, Portsmouth International Port, which is already a live tax site, Portico as our customs agent, and Dunsbury, which is our industrial park, just north of the city in the borough of Havant. We haven't got time today to dwell too much on the benefits of Solent Freeport, but if you're interested in being involved, please do get in touch if you want to know more about how the Freeport, either within Portsmouth or across the Solent area, can benefit your business, and we'll be happy to help you make those relationships and connections so that we can support growth in the local area. Can I ask you to move on, please? One of the other things we do is work with a range of different partners. So this is a quick plea you'll be pleased to know before I finish up today to talk about Venture Fest. Venture Fest is an annual conference. We're holding it on the 16th of November at the Ageas Bowl in Southampton. As one of the partners, we're keen to get Portsmouth businesses to attend that. So please do use that code VFSPCC to obtain your free access to that amazing event. And I'd particularly encourage you, if you are part of our wonderful innovators, to have a look at the options that could be available and the sponsorship opportunities through VentureFest there. Again, please do look at the website for VentureFest South, and there is still time to book as an exhibitor if your business is ready to take a slightly further step. This is just one of the many things that we do to promote businesses. Everything from Southsea Food Festival and our Eat the Island soft launch, where we brought together networks of businesses. What we're trying to do is listen to our businesses so that we're providing the offer that you most want. Can we do the final slide, please? So my call to action for you again, obviously there's the details of the helpline. Please do get in touch if we can support you in any way. Sign up for our business bulletin on the PCC website. Go on to LinkedIn, find Portsmouth Economic Development and Skills, where we try and share as much information as possible with our businesses. Or you can contact me direct or find me on LinkedIn, and I'd be delighted to support you in any way that I can. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane, for that wonderful presentation, wonderful overview of innovation in Portsmouth. I'm Nick Lowe from the Academic Engagement Team at Connected Successful. And just before we head over to our Innovation Exchange panel, one of our panelists today has very kindly volunteered to provide a short overview and presentation of how the University of Portsmouth attracts funding and investment for research and innovation. And it's Professor Jeremy Howells, who is the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research, Innovation and External Engagement at the University of Portsmouth. And he was also an IPLA participant of the program last year. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you very much, Nick. Next slide, please. Thank you. I'm just briefly, as a preface to our question and answer session about innovation exchange and working with universities, I just want to talk a bit about research and innovation funding and investment from a university perspective. Next slide, please. Now, I'm going to look at very briefly research and innovation funding sources for universities, how we engage in helping to attract investment, also about working together, and lastly, universities as key stakeholders, and I'll have a brief conclusion. It will be largely from a Portsmouth perspective, but obviously we work closely with other universities in Hampshire, Southampton, Solent, Winchester, and close neighbours, Bournemouth, Chichester, Sussex, Broughton, and Surrey. So it will apply to them as well in a broad sense. Next slide, please. So where do universities get their funding sources, and how do they engage with businesses? Well, we get money essentially through quality research funding. This is through the Research Excellence Framework, which is undertaken every 5 or 6 years. And based on our performance, we get funding from that. We did well in the last exercise in 2022, and our funding increased by pretty well 40%. So that's good for Portsmouth. We also get funding for innovation and how we engage on that. So that's through the Higher Education Innovation Fund. Currently, that stands at 260 million across the UK. But then thirdly, we also are involved in competitive bids with the major research council funding in England and the UK, and with government departments. And virtually all research proposals now involve business engagement. And indeed, success on proposals is rated on the stakeholders that are associated with the research and innovation proposals. But then universities also work directly with other UK businesses in research projects which the businesses themselves fund, and increasingly with overseas companies and funders. And that's become increasingly important over the last 10 or 15 years. Next slide, please. So it's a bit about our funding and how we work with companies, but we also attract investment through our own university spin-offs by attracting co-joint investment from venture capitalists and business angels and other funders. We also have begun joint ventures with companies, and we're seeking to invest in that and being partners with that. And then on a wider scale, which Jane has already talked about, obviously with the City Council, the Freeport, Hampshire County Council indeed, working with Hampshire Chamber of Commerce. We also work with them on schemes to attract in local private investment, to invest in the locality. And obviously, the formation of the Freeport will be a big stimulus to that. And then we also attract in additional investment and capital spend through Research England and the local LEP through investments, for example, on enzyme research, mission space, and medtech. And again, these are three areas that are particularly important for the university, but also for Southampton and Solent as well. So we're working together on that process. Next slide, please. So working together, how might we interact with you? Well, often, even in terms of research and innovation, it doesn't start with that. Usually contacts happen through our other activities associated much more widely with enterprise business engagement. So, for example, Portsmouth, the University of Portsmouth runs the largest group of Help to Grow initiatives in the UK, covering schemes in Hampshire, Oxfordshire, the Isle of Wight, and that's in association with the HM Treasury. And that helps identify and works with businesses to help them further grow, both in terms of innovation, but general business growth in marketing, but also in exporting. Then there's the area of knowledge transfer partnerships, where we work together with businesses and other organisations on joint initiatives. We now have over 50 entrepreneurs in residence, who are entrepreneurs who work and act as mentors for local businesses, both new and existing businesses, and that's a scheme we run from the university. We have our own enterprise programme, mainly centred on students, but also staff, where they're seeking to look to set up their own businesses. We're now about to start our third year, and this has been highly successful. Another area is our law clinic, mainly focused on families and households. But during COVID, we also saw a number of key businesses seeking advice on how they dealt with the COVID situation and how we could provide advice and support on them. We're also setting up a new business clinic and also setting up an intellectual property toolkit, which we want to provide free support to those businesses in Portsmouth and Hampshire. And then last but not least, we're involved in degree apprenticeships. Next slide, please. Obviously, co-creation is important. I briefly mentioned about space. So this is a big area for us, but we also work in health and life sciences and also sustainability, both in terms of working with others, but also providing spaces for them to interact with. There is a general lack of incubator innovation space in the Southeast. So again, that's something we as a university want to build and develop upon. We already have our own 4 Innovation Connect spaces run with Barclays. We've got our own Technopole. And again, we work with venture capitalists and business angels to pursue specific commercial developments. Next slide, please. And obviously, we're key stakeholders. We're pretty well permanent fixtures. It's very difficult to get rid of us on the local scene. There are some mergers. So, for example, last week, Anglia Ruskin University was merging with another institution. So there are some mergers, but very few closures. So we're an ongoing presence. We know the local innovation landscape. Obviously, we can learn more, but we've got a good knowledge on that. UK universities are truly world leading. And it's not just the Oxbridges and UCLs or Manchesters. All universities in the UK do have a very good research and innovation record. And as part of that, we're also, excuse me, provide a key global lens and attract to international research and innovation collaboration. Really sorry about this. And lastly, we have a local and civic mission as part of that engagement process. Next slide. So we engage in long-term horizon scanning, particularly across key sectors. And we do that not only on our own behalf, but also increasingly working with businesses to look at 5 or 10-year development horizons. We're also safe and trusted actors, so we can help support wider networks in the local area, both Portsmouth and again more widely. Social enterprise is key. And again, the issue of listening with from businesses and the area of co-creation. So thank you. I'm losing my voice. Hopefully I'll be able to revive a bit for the questions and answers. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, for that overview of how the attracts funding and investment, and sort of the types of investment, and potentially how we could also work together with how businesses and local SMEs could work together with the university, which is sort of exactly what this next panel is about. So, as I said before, I'm Nick Loke. I'm an academic engagement officer at Connected Places Catapult, and I see sort of 2 different roles in this panel today. One being obviously to chair the panel, and 2, hopefully not to bore anybody with it, so I can actually hand over to the next panel that my colleague Richard is chairing. So the panel topic today is innovation exchange between sort of academia and industry. And we want to sort of understand and tease out sort of the importance of working together, the importance of academia and industry to work together. Why is it important? And also sort of impact of working together, and what kind of impact that we could potentially generate to not only contribute to sort of the growth and development of the city, but also to benefit sort of the workforce in Portsmouth. As for who you might want to engage with, I'd like to introduce today's panelists, one of which you've already heard from. It's Jeremy Howell. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So Jeremy Howell, who you've already heard from, is the Deputy Vice Chancellor at the University of Portsmouth. Jeremy is a leading international researcher on innovation and exchange. He's a fellow of the Academy of Social Sciences and a visiting fellow and active member of Kellogg College at the University of Oxford. He's also held senior positions at Kent, Southampton, and Manchester universities. And whilst at Manchester, he was the exec director of the ESRC Centre for Research and Innovation and Competition, and the Manchester Institute of Innovation Research and Alliance Manchester Business School. Jeremy has also held the Eddie Davies Chair of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. So that's a bit about Jeremy. We've also got joining us today Sarah Deppering, who is the Director of Research and Innovation Services at the university. She leads the department that provides strategic insight and supports activities that underpin the ambitious growth targets for research and innovation at the university. She has a degree in geography and MBA from Henley Management College, and started a career in the NHS, and has worked in higher education sector for many years in a variety of managerial and strategic roles. Sarah is also a board member of Maritime UK Solent, and she's passionate about the role for universities in making a difference to both economy and society. So those are all about our 2 panelists today. And just a note to all attendees as well, we will be, throughout the panel session, actually, we'll be taking Q&As. So if you'd like to, ask any questions to our panelists, please do use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, which I believe 1 or 2 of you may have already done, to thank Jane for the presentation. So that's very nice to see it being utilized so far. But other than that, yeah, let's sort of get this panel started. So I think we are going to, I'd like to ask Jeremy and Sarah to sort of turn on the cameras, if that's all right. And I think we might not be using the slides for now. if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think that was a really good introduction to of how, let's say, the university managed to sort of attract investment and funding. But I think I'd like to sort of know why should universities, if let's say I'm a business, if I'm an SME, why should universities and local businesses sort of engage with each other, and potentially why you think it's important. So if Jeremy or Sarah, if anybody of you wanted to take that question first.
But I'll start, just in case Jeremy is still trying to breathe.
No, I'm here.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Jeremy. Your camera's off, Jeremy.
No, I'm trying to. I can't open
Okay,
it.
I'll start while you're sorting that out.
I'll be there.
Thanks, Nick. So I don't like your question. So your question that you set out is, why is it important for businesses to engage with the university? But I would like to flip it around, because actually it's an imperative that the university engages with business. So, and I think that's really important, and it's very important. The University of Portsmouth is an applied research university, and that little difference, I think, demonstrates a lot in our approach. So we need to understand the skills requirement of the future workforce. The only way that we can really understand that is by engaging with business. Now, my remit is research and innovation, but every time I talk to a company, they want to talk to me because they want to access our talent pool. I am able to then feed that back into the academic aspects of the university. So it's really important that we understand what the skills requirements are, because we want our graduates to be able to obtain high quality jobs within our region and retain them within our region. For research and innovation perspective, we need to understand the challenges that businesses have. We are very good at creating new knowledge, but our academics and our researchers are motivated in applying that knowledge. And the best way for us to apply that knowledge is to work with businesses to solve problems. We can invent our own problems, but actually that takes a very long time to demonstrate some impact. So it's an imperative for us to understand and work with businesses. And we at Portsmouth will work with businesses of all sizes, because businesses of all sizes have problems. So we, as Jane has alluded to and Jeremy has alluded to, we have a very vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem, and the university is producing graduates and academics to fulfill that entrepreneurial pipeline. But we also want to actively engage with SMEs. We want to understand companies' problems, and then we want to apply our knowledge and expertise to help solve those problems. So that's why universities need to work with businesses. We want practical applications. We want to be able to test our ideas. And as I say, the government, as Jeremy has alluded to, requires university to demonstrate impact. So we will get funding on our ability to be able to demonstrate, and Jeremy's outlined that. But actually, it's a key driver for academic behaviour. It's what gets a lot of researchers out of bed in the morning. I want to do something that makes a difference. And a lot of that comes from working in business. And the last thing I would say is that, and it comes back to the place, by working with businesses, we can create the opportunities for high quality jobs for our graduates. If we retain our graduates, we encourage new companies to work in our area. We can deliver economic value and economic growth for our region. That increases the quality of the place that we all choose to live and work in, and therefore it's a virtuous circle.
Yeah, I think that's great, Sarah. I think making a difference is certainly sort of one of the motivations that hopefully can get not only academics but also sort of local businesses out of bed, making a difference for the region as well. Before I sort of pass on to Jeremy, I think we've had a question in the chat box on sort of whether we have a university policy to sort of incentivize sort of innovators, and sort of the percentage of funding from sort of the different levels of government, from the federal level, the national level, to local government. So I think perhaps if you'd like to also answer that, I think that was a follow-up from sort of your presentation. So yeah, I'll pass on to you, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you. I've got my voice back now, so apologies for that. I think there has been really quite a radical change in how universities approach businesses. So, as Sarah said, in the past, perhaps it was very much seen as working with businesses as sort of accidental involvement, but now, and it's been true for the university, it's our key mission that working with companies, particularly on more applied areas, and looking at those outcomes. So I think increasingly universities are judged on their impact. They're judged on their involvement with businesses. But as I was trying to say before, it's also a key civic mission. It's what our academics want to do. They want to show a difference to both those local environments, but also more nationally and internationally, particularly on key areas like water quality. Obviously, I work with Southern Water, but right through to global issues around issues around plastics and recycling there, and the impact on the wider global environment there. So I see it's now very much a norm, but equally something we need to further build upon and develop. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think something going on to sort of further building that relationship between academia and industry and local business is definitely something we'll touch on in this panel today. So I think it's great that you've already brought it up, and I think it's great that both sort of Sarah and Jeremy, you've brought up things that are sort of intertwined together. In terms of Sarah, you brought up sort of the skills requirements needed to potentially train sort of the next generation of the workforce, and also Jeremy brought up sort of the outcomes of the universities, how they're judged on applied areas, and the impact, and also the civic mission. And I think that's actually a great segue to move on to how we can actually put our thoughts and that importance into action. Because at the Catapult, we also not only put a view to the present, but also the future, how we can sort of channel innovation for both market and society. And we're often sort of intermediaries between universities and industry. So I think I'd like to move on to the question of, we know it's important now, but how do we actually sort of put that into practice? So how best can sort of local businesses and SMEs sort of engage with the industry? I think, Sarah, I believe you have a video that you wanted to play. Would you like to do that now, or would you potentially like to sort of take that question and then play that video? Sorry, I believe you're muted.
That was the one thing we were all told not to do, was to not do that. So I apologize for doing exactly what I was told not to do. Yes, I'll answer the question that was in the chat if in the only way that I can. And one of the and it leads in onto the video, but one of the ways that universities and businesses can engage is by accessing third-party funding. Now, I can't give the exact breakdown, but the UK government has a pledge for 2.4% of GDP to be invested in R&D within. Now, that 2.4%, the expectation from government is that will come from private sector, release of private sector funding, with the expectation that the public purse needs to pump prime and motivate and incentivize the companies to do that. So there is sort of like a political pledge, and there is a recognition of funding, and the funding is aimed to pump prime to start, but with the view that the outcome of that initial piece of work is so beneficial that future investment in R&D will not be beholden to public finance in the future, and there will be more investment from others. So the video that Nick refers to is something that we put together for a flagship government program called KTP, and Jeremy mentioned this earlier, and I think it is important for the companies that we work with to talk about why they work with us.
So I think we could have the video played now, if that's all right. Thank you.
What is the Knowledge Transfer Partnership? A KTP is a partnership between the University of Portsmouth, Innovate UK, and a business. It lasts between 1 to 3 years, and 50 to 67% of the project is funded by Innovate UK, depending on the business size. Both the business and the University of Portsmouth share up-to-date knowledge to better enhance academic teaching and business practices.
The Knowledge Transfer Programme gave us access to a broad team that perhaps you couldn't necessarily afford yourself if you were going out and running this project on your own.
Supported with the knowledge from the academic experts at Portsmouth, it really gave us something that we wouldn't have been able to get otherwise.
Before the KTP, we had around 9 million British pounds. We're currently 3.5 times the turnover.
Our sales have increased 30% this year versus last year, purely driven by the Knowledge Transfer Partnership.
We had weekly and monthly meetings, and finally representatives of the university and the company and Innovate UK, we all kind of get together.
Through those regular meetings, we were able to provide a really nice, wide knowledge base.
The benefit is staff engaging in this KTP project to update their knowledge.
Knowledge transfer partnerships are relatively unique because they're an applied research project. So it provides us with real tangible outputs that's really rewarding for us as academics.
I mean, theory is good on the paper, but when you apply it, you find new challenges.
KTP is for something that I feel it's more close to me because I can manage the project because it's a lot of time for you to learn to build your career.
Gautam was able to demonstrate his great business acumen and technical skills, and of course became valuable to the business, and it all started with the KTP.
The whole KTP partnership has been really successful, and the fact that we're going into another 3-year one is proof that we've been really happy with what we've done so far.
What advice would I give companies thinking of taking on a KTP with Portsmouth? Don't take too long considering it. We've got another KTP that we're about to run at the moment. They have an excellent team. They will very quickly understand your business, and they'll come up with a solution to whatever challenges you bring them.
What is the knowledge?
Well, thanks for playing the video. Sarah, would you like to say a couple of words on that, or would you like us to move on?
So that the KTP there, I think, so one of the companies there, MoMA, they increased their turnover for one project of £7 million turnover increase, and that company owner has just sold his company now to a major market leader. So that's one motivation for doing it, is all that I would say. There are lots of other schemes, but I think the KTP scheme is a very good, easy entry into working with universities.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think for those of you who aren't aware, sort of KTPs are sort of part-funded grants of 80 to 100,000 pounds, I believe, from Innovate UK. Jeremy, would you like to sort of come in the conversation of how best universities can sort of engage with industry, other than sort of KTPs, perhaps?
I think, well, it was referenced in the clip. I think just start a contact with the university, however you want to do it, and it can be through, you know, a whole series of different avenues, but we can provide a conduit in terms of who you might need to talk to, who are the best people to develop your ideas and projects. We can provide support in that process. And indeed, we provide space for new businesses that are seeking to start up. So I think really it's just starting that process, which I think is so important. Don't be afraid to feel you have to have something really polished as an issue or problem that you want to bring to a university. I think almost that is part of the process. We will help you talk through the issues that you've got, the innovation that you might have, or the solution you're seeking. And I think that's really important. And I think one of our roles, increasingly, we've done very well, but to be ever more accessible to businesses and provide as many touch points as possible for businesses to engage with us. They might start on, say, skills and training, and as I've said before, it might then evolve into a research or innovation project, working on new product development, helping them with their website. There's a whole range of activities that we can support and develop for businesses working with them.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think the sort of important takeaway message to, I guess, what you've just said, Jeremy, is how universities can potentially help channel that expertise all the way from, let's say, in academia and innovation low stage to what potentially is in practice already in a business, and potentially improve it as well. I do have to ask you both potentially what might be the differences in engaging with the university if, let's say, you are a small SME compared to or versus a large organization. Are there sort of main differences in the way that you engage with small SMEs versus large organizations, and essentially how would you go about that?
Shall I start? So I think SMEs are usually much more concerned about, when working with universities, in protecting their own IP. And I think they're very concerned that that the university is motivated to strip companies of IP for not sharing IP, and that just isn't the case. So from our perspective, we're interested in the impact, and we also, there is, and I always describe it as the reputational damage of us as a university attacking a small company and extracting their IP would be so damaging to our reputation, when the vast majority of our money comes from tuition, which is all reputation based. It's not going to happen. So I think, and we can easily address that when we get those conversations, but I think that's one of the things that SMEs are really concerned about when they're working with universities, is that what's going to happen to their IP and can they protect it? And we can work with them so that we can reassure them, but that's often one of the challenges that we have with SMEs more than the large corporates. Many universities don't choose to work with SMEs because they are hard work and there is less money available. We in Portsmouth, as Jeremy said, the Help to Grow scheme is targeting SMEs, and that's a strategic decision that we took, that we want to engage with SMEs, and many of our programs are SME focused, and that's because we think that's the right thing for our university. The economic landscape for the Portsmouth region is incredibly SME focused, and it doesn't make any sense, and that's where the economic growth is going to come from. And for some of the sectors that we are really concentrating in on, so for example the space sector, which is one of our key priority areas at the moment, because it's an emerging sector, okay, we've got the large primes, we've got BAE and we've got Airbus, but that growth in that sector is going to be adopted by the SME sector. So we need to be working with them because that's where the economic growth comes from. We need to help them grow. That creates more of that virtuous circle with the quality of place.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, just brief. I know we're running out of time, but just briefly on that. I mentioned the intellectual property toolkit that we're developing. Yesterday we launched a research group on intellectual property and how we provide advice and support to companies on that. And that is particularly aimed at small businesses. But, we work internationally on providing the European Patent Office. We've got direct access and research with them, but we want to be practical. And we've developed this toolkit, which will be coming online shortly, that will be free. and we want local businesses to use and develop that. So I think that's a key area for us that we're seeking to develop.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think both of your responses sort of indicate that sort of the university is open definitely to working with SMEs. The approach hasn't really changed, but is rather sort of adapted to the specific region that you're focusing on, which is Portsmouth. And if anything, it already sort of segues to what I was aiming to talk about after, which is sort of the impact of research and innovation on local businesses. And I think both of you have already highlighted specific kind of mechanisms for that, whether it be sort of the IP toolkit, whether sort of be sort of saying, oh, you know, we can actually help SMEs and sort of take away all of their IP. I'm sure there could be another panel session about IP, but definitely we're not going to go into that today. But I think I'd like to sort of transition this in terms of impact, in terms of the skills agenda and upskilling, because I think in the beginning, both Sarah and Jeremy did mention that one of the main aims as a university, and because the main source of funding does come from tuition, is that it's upskilling, retraining people in the industry. So I'd like to potentially shift that conversation of impact onto that. And I'd like to ask you both sort of, how have you seen that impact from university all the way into SME, into emerging sectors, specifically driving innovation?
You want to go again first, Sarah, or shall I?
Okay, so let's take space, because it's a key priority area for the region, and it's a key opportunity area for the region. I think the current expectation is that we need 40,000 new space-enabled employees to deliver the UK space strategy. This region has the UK's largest regional space cluster, and Portsmouth is the heart of that. So we can be part of that solution for the skills piece. We have one of the country's best research institutes in astrophysics, which is leading on this skills area. We also have ambition in terms of, as Jeremy mentioned, in terms of mission space. I think the next stage for us to do is to work with government and to say, put more investment into this area. And that's because we have got the largest regional cluster. But that will create so the impact will be seen on us helping companies to exploit the space-based opportunity. That is also heavily linked into our marine and maritime place. So there is nowhere better in the UK to invest in space, we would argue. Be part of that solution in terms of the skills pipeline, because that's where we can attract highly qualified, high quality graduate students and graduates. And then in terms of growth, we're just like everyone else in terms, we want economic growth. We want those companies to be profitable. And many of the projects where we pull down funding, particularly from government, we are required to demonstrate the number of companies that we've worked for and what the GVA growth has been. And one of the projects that we've just been audited on our different sector, our health tech sector. For every pound that the government gave us, we turned that into £22 worth of value to the companies that engaged in that project, and that was creating new products. So we can evidence the impact of the work that we do, and we're required to evidence that impact. But it's from everything from skills, knowledge, and not just our growth, but the growth of the companies that work with us.
Jeremy, would you like to come in on
that?
Yeah,
again, briefly, I mentioned degree apprenticeships. That's one area where we work with local businesses. MBAs, we run part-time MBAs. We're looking to develop that. We have an online DBA now that we provide globally for that. Short courses, again, we're really happy to talk to companies if they want our support and involvement in running short courses on particular areas. For example, in things like logistics and supply chain, we've got a key international centre there, which we're really keen to work with people on that. So there's a whole range of activities. And then obviously key element of that is working with further education colleges locally, how we embed with that, how we can work better with them. We've already got good relationships with them, but we can always improve on that. So that, again, there are lots of opportunities that companies can engage with us in terms of the skills agenda. And we're really keen, again, on developing that.
Yeah, I think again, both of your responses on sort of upskilling and reskilling the skills agenda showcases sort of the breadth that you don't just cover degrees, as KTPs, degree apprenticeships, and also short courses, especially for Portsmouth growing sort of logistics, maritime sector, and also the space sector. I think I'd like to ask one final question before we move on to the next panel, which is obviously if there's collaboration between academia, industry, we must also look to the future and see potentially what's next in the next 5 to 10 years, and also what could be improved from the existing aspects of collaboration between universities and local businesses. So I'd like to ask you both as a sort of final question, if you thought there were sort of any aspects towards this collaboration you thought could be potentially improved, or if you'd like the opportunity to highlight anything in the future pipeline in the next 5 to 10 years that businesses could potentially utilize in the region.
So I'll start because I saw because Jeremy had done that on mute thing. I'll cover for you, Jeremy. It's okay. So I think universities and University of Portsmouth is no different. I think we're very difficult to access. I can see that one of the attendees has already done the right thing, which is just link up with us on LinkedIn. It's a good, once you know somebody, you know the whole of the way of the university. We're quite difficult to get hold of. So I think universities need to do something better doing that. And I think we need to shout louder. Every time I see a news report like the £4 billion worth of investment from Tata going into Bridgewater, I want to know when does Portsmouth get its money? And the government's not going to give it money until it does something that says this is where we're going to invest. And so we need to, as a community, we need to have real clear strategic vision, and we need to be saying to government, invest down here because you are going to get a significant a return on investment. I don't want a car factory. I would very much like a large space centre, for example, or a low carbon centre, or something that is more aligned to our place.
Okay, I tried to mention the horizon scanning in my presentation before I lost my voice, but we're interested. We really want to look out the next 10 or 15 years. We have to do that as an organisation, but actually it works much better if we work with businesses to talk and look through particularly how certain sectors are developing over time. So again, that's something I'm really interested in developing. Sarah's mentioned space. We're putting a lot of investment into AI in a whole range of applications. So that's an area where we're really investing in, and I obviously it's very topical, but I see it's just going to become a key way of life. But we need to look at that, how that is affecting both day-to-day operations, but also how it changes our research and innovation function. So I think that's key. Another area where we're really strong, Portsmouth and Hampshire more generally, is the medtech area. So again, that's something we're working with Portsmouth Hospital University Trust. It's an area where we're really trying to build on our existing network, which is SITE, which cuts across, involves how many companies? 350, Sarah, in the medtech area. And we see this as, a key area where we've got strength, but also in the wider Hampshire economy that we want to see to build and development, both by ourselves, but obviously with our local partners, including Southampton University.
That's great. And I think that is a great way to sort of end this panel session and wrap up. Just to summarize, I think it's great that the university has shown sort of the commitment to sort of innovation support, thought leadership, sort of channeling that directly into companies. Also investment into sort of emerging sectors, as you mentioned, as you both mentioned, into sort of emerging medtech sectors and also the space sector, and also reskilling and upskilling the workforce from degree apprenticeships all the way to short courses at different sort of levels. I'd also like to say to attendees that some of the links that we've mentioned will be sent to you after this via email. And I'd also like to thank you both, Sarah and Jeremy, for today's panel, very exciting panel. And I'd like to hand over to Richard for the next panel. Thank you both.
Thank you very much, Nick, and thank you, Sarah and Jeremy, and also thank you, Jane, for your presentation at the start. To kind of finish off the afternoon, I'd just like to introduce our panel for scaling an innovative business. One of the themes that's come through Jane's presentation and also the discussion that Nick was having is around practical steps for help and support. And in this final panel, if you just move the slide on, please, we are going to be talking to a few people who are able to offer real practical support to innovators, entrepreneurs, and scaling small businesses in Portsmouth and beyond. We have 4 people on the panel. Unfortunately, Steph is now no longer unable to make it. But just to introduce the panel, we have James, who is the Head of Enterprise and Skills at Solent LEP. James has had a career in Enterprise and Skills since 2018 at Solent LEP and has previously been involved in football, both as a business development manager and as a professional player. I won't name the team because they're not one I'm a particular fan of, but there we go. We also have Teresa, who is the Economic Strategy Manager at Hampshire County Council. Teresa is charged with delivering the economic strategy for Hampshire, which was published at the beginning of this year. And she also manages the business growth team, supporting business development across marine, life sciences, aerospace, space and defence. We've heard a bit about space today, and that's a really interesting emerging area of entrepreneurship in the region. And finally, we have Richard Teal, who is an innovation and growth specialist at Innovate UK Edge, based down on the south coast. He's got extensive experience in the engineering industries and has been supporting innovative businesses in the area since 2016. If I could just ask the panelists to put their cameras on. What I'd really like to do is just start off by asking each of you about the support that you offer to SMEs and innovators in Portsmouth. Teresa, maybe you could start for us.
Yeah, of course. So we take a bit more of a sort of holistic approach. We don't go around to giving direct funding. So what we do is support organisations in their own delivery, such as the Catapult. And we also host roundtables with if a company has a specific need or wants to get into a specific sector or grow their supply chain, we can pull businesses and organisations together to have that conversation to see how they do that. So we work on a sort of reactive basis. So if businesses come to us with a particular question, problem, we either direct them towards particular types of support, or we can, like I say, have those sort of round table types of conversations with them, point them towards specific networks and things like that. So we, like I say, we don't do that direct funding, but we can have sort of roundabout conversations and going back to sort of the previous panel, we can make introductions to local universities as well, as we really see the benefit of the interactions between education and business as well.
Thank you very much. And James, Solent LEP, what support are you able to offer for entrepreneurs and innovators?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So a big part of our role, we have funding from central government for a function called Growth Hub, and a large proportion of the Growth Hub's role is kind of being that glue in between all of the various different offers from both the public and private sector. So connecting businesses with the right type of support and the support that they're looking for. So that sort of signposting, business support world and landscape can be quite confusing. It can be quite difficult at times to kind of navigate your way through and to find the right support that you want. So our role is very much an impartial role as well, in helping people get to the right support. We do also run some sort of more intensive programs. We kind of sort of scan the horizon, try to work with partners to try and fill the gaps where there is potential gaps in support, certainly from the public sector. So we'll run some sort of intensive activities that might be one-to-one business clinics, face-to-face business clinics, or it might be sort of sectorally led. And then lastly, from time to time and in the past, we've had funding as well available for SMEs, grants and loans. We are looking at putting some new funding packages together for later on this year as well. So that might be available and something people might want to talk about.
Excellent. And Richard, Innovate UK Edge, could you just give us a bit of an overview about what you guys at Innovate UK Edge offer?
Sure. Thanks, Richard. So Innovate UK Edge is part of the Innovate UK family, which of course is also where the catapults belong. So I see it as being three parts of Innovate UK. You've got a technical side, which tends to be catapults and RTOs. Then there's a funding side, still very much involved with providing grants and grant opportunities for SMEs. And there's a coaching side to Innovate UK, and it's a coaching side which I'm part of, called Innovate UK Edge. And typically, I think we're the lucky ones, we're the foot soldiers. We get out to meet companies, find out where they are, find out where they want to go, and see how we can help through our network, help them get to where they want to be. Funding often comes up, of course, and we have some knowledge and some certainly some contacts within the Innovate UK funding side. And I think it's already been mentioned, but don't think that there's just a few big grants. There's a smaller one, 15k RTO grant, which is available. So probably best if this is appealing to SMEs that they're watching, just to get in touch with me or us after this presentation, and you will have our contact emails. And then just finally, just going back to funding, it tends to play quite a key part in what we do. We have a training program which is free for companies wishing to find investment. It's called Investability, and it's typically a 2-day training course where we will help a company develop their pitch deck and train them to pitch to the appropriate areas in which they might find investment.
Okay, thank you very much. That's really good. And yeah, I think Innovate UK Edge work quite closely, as Richard mentioned there, with the catapult centres, and the catapult centres support many of the areas of technological innovation that we've been hearing about from during this last couple of hours, particularly satellite applications for the space sector, medicines discovery, ourselves for connected cities, and so on. What I'd like to do is quickly move on. Well, not quickly move on. I'd like to move on to discussing a little bit about funding. It's something that you've all kind of mentioned. I know not everyone on this panel offers opportunities for funding, but it would be we're at a point where I think traditional routes of funding are starting to get a little bit tricky to access, such as venture capital funding and business angel funding. And I'm just wondering what sort of opportunities for a mixed or varied funding strategy people right at the beginning of their entrepreneurial journey can take. Are the bank loans available? Are there opportunities to access small local pots of funding that can help start a journey before we get on to scaling? Maybe James, if you could start.
Yeah, no problem. You're right. The funding landscape, I think, has changed, and it differs greatly. Through devolution and localization, the central government have kind of, certainly public funds have given decision making to local areas. Some local areas will have the ability to work up funds themselves. As I mentioned earlier, that in the past the LEP has had significant funds from central government to be able to do that and shape certainly grant funds. As it stands, the LEP hasn't been getting any new funding, so it doesn't really have the ability to do that, but we're able to recycle some of the existing funds that we have. So we will be looking at putting some new funds out in the coming months. We're just going through a period of sort of consulting with, and sort of scanning the horizon, looking at what is already out there, so we don't compete, and we try to complement any other funds that are out there. But part of the service that we also offer is we have a search platform that we have available, and we can do grant searches or funding searches for SMEs. Just to mention that our service is fully funded, so there is no cost to a business, but we have that ability to search for funds, local funds, national funds, or international funds as well. Again, post-COVID, that landscape has changed a bit. So I think certainly startups, people starting businesses, are having to think a bit differently about how they fund their business. Government does have a startup loan program, so particularly for startups, people looking to start businesses. But one of the things that we hear a lot from the banks, etc., are for businesses that might be applying to banks or for loans or for grants is the business plan as well, and giving the confidence to the funders that actually, if it's a loan, it's repayable, it can be managed properly, and probably more for grants is what the outputs look like as well. So what is the funder going to get for their money, essentially, I suppose, to put it in the easiest terminology. And we like to try and play a role where we can, again, remaining impartial. Some of these loans, grants, etc., there can be a lot of work for a business to be able to apply for them. So it's managing expectation a little bit, because it can take a lot of time, and time is precious for any business of any size, any sector. So it's trying to help manage the expectation of applying for funds as well.
Excellent. And interesting there that you mentioned kind of the business plan, and maybe Teresa, one of the things that sounds very scary when you're starting out at the beginning of your journey is a business plan and financial plans and making sure there's cash flows, and really all you want to do is kind of roll up your sleeves and get on with things. What sort of support and links would you suggest or make to people who are really looking at kind of the beginnings of a blank sheet of paper and kind of hearing scary words around things like cash flows and balance sheets?
Yeah, I think it's a really, when you realise you need to access some funding, you've got a great idea, you've got a great business going, and you need to get the money in. Understanding what you need is quite a difficult place, and it sort of does come back to the whole funding landscape is quite muddied, and you don't necessarily know where to go first, and it is sort of, do you have a good relationship with your bank already? Could you go to them for advice? Looking at places like the Scale Up Institute, going for support with people like Innovate UK, etc., or going to your local growth hub where they can talk you through different areas and the terminology. Not everybody is, you're an advocate, your skill area is in the product or the service that you're providing, and not necessarily in the finance area. So it is seeking support, going to your accountant, whatever it is, to try and really bottom out what that is, because the business plan is really important. Coming back to it and refreshing it as you as you grow. You might get funding first time, you need to refresh that. So it's keeping on top of what it is you want your business to achieve, what your goals are. So go to somebody you already know and seek sort of signposting help or seek advice would be something that I would suggest as a first port of call.
Excellent. And Richard, Innovate UK Edge would be kind of one of those agencies where you are across a very wide range of funding opportunities, as you've already described. But as businesses start to grow, what would you say would be the major difference between those small early pots and getting bigger and bigger and starting to think about more money? I mean, I assume more risk comes into it, but what was the difference between those early days and a little bit later on when people are starting to grow?
Well, I think firstly, looking at those early days, we don't see as many startups as we used to, but we still see some. As we've already been told, I mean, it's been very, very tough recently for startup funding. COVID had a huge impact there, and we can see clearly that the level of funding for startups had gone that direction. But there are still some opportunities, and I think the opportunities are getting better. Firstly, I'd say just ask yourself whether you actually need funding or would a loan do it. There are more opportunities. The British Bank is a good place to go to. Your high street bank are more used to actually providing loans now than they used to, because there isn't the startup funding so much. The Barclays have invested in Barclays Lab, which is actually quite a good setup for startups. It's certainly worth looking at, I think. And Portsmouth play a part in that as well. LEPs always, and it's good to hear from James that hopefully there's some LEPs to be very good for funding, and hopefully that will be coming back. But always keep your eye on them. A lot of startup funding or early days funding does come locally because it's a job creation they're interested in. So just always watch that. And finally, look specialist, because there are small pots of funding if your application is very, very specialist. So whether, for example, it's linked to the electric vehicle industry or something like that, just look for those little, sometimes quite small organizations that have little pockets of funding in your area of expertise. And then you asked about then the next round, if you like. It's complex, it changes from company to company, but usually when a company is at seed stage, they tend to look for some element of investment then. And again, that can be quite complex, but there are lots of angel investors still about. There are setups actually within the region where you can pitch to a group of investors, a bit like the Dragon's Den scenario. We do some training, which I mentioned very briefly in the introduction, for that, to help get companies who are at that very early stage at seed funding, the first time they've gone out to try and find investment, to get everything right, get the valuation on the company right, agree what kind of shareholding you're offering, get the pitch deck right, and pitch to the right people who could be interested. And then finally, we have access to a database, an investors database for the UK. It's a database called Bohurst, but it's very useful. It can help us find the right investment organisations for the client. So again, that's a really good tool at that stage for companies to use.
Yeah, that's really useful. And I mean, I definitely recommend accessing databases of investors. I know that Innovate UK offer a range of funding around matched funding, where it's part grant, part early investor, and that funding increases as you progress your idea and your company, and you can get larger and larger pots sorry, co-financed with investors to get you into the investment landscape. I know that we've already touched upon some of the broad range of sectors that are growing and thriving around Portsmouth and in Portsmouth. But it would be really interesting to hear a little bit about where you're seeing some of the major areas of growth. I know that that space has been mentioned a few times. Teresa, what are you seeing as the main areas that people are starting businesses, areas where or sectors where collaboration might be really kind of possible, and growing clusters of similar thinking businesses in the area in Portsmouth and around?
I think what we're really seeing is either in startups or established businesses actually, is where they're looking to expand into other sectors that aren't necessarily their key sectors, and how they access new markets with maybe technology or services that they've tried and tested and are working with their key sectors, but their expansion isn't necessarily growth in new products, but using their products in different places. So with the space sector, for example, there are technologies and services out there that can sort of translate over into that sector, and similarly in defence, which is a sector that we're looking to develop a cluster with DASA, which is Defence Accelerator for the Southeast. There's a clear crossover between a lot of services and technologies and businesses within Portsmouth, certainly within defence, but others, places in wider Hampshire that can really translate over into different sectors. So I would say that we're really seeing that, and especially where digital technology, AI, machine learning can come in as well. So I wouldn't say that there is one specific sector that I'd say is really emerging. There's lots of sort of niche sectors that are really starting to build and develop sort of widthways, if you like.
And interesting there, you mentioned DASA, the Defence and Security Accelerator. They're actually another source of funding, and actually quite an attractive source of funding. They do they offer a number of opportunities at different levels of development. They're 100% funding, and in case anyone is kind of scared of touching defence work, they actually like to see technologies and businesses that have a significant market outside of the defence market. They don't really like funding things just for defence. In the past, I've worked with some very strange applications for that, but it's really quite good funding, and they're very supportive of people who go directly to them. Richard, in your kind of sometimes first stop shop role in the area, what kind of emerging businesses and sectors are you seeing that you're going to see some growth and some clustering of in Portsmouth?
Right, well, certainly digital and AI already been mentioned. I mean, globally, the whole digital and AI industry is getting bigger and bigger, would be absolutely huge, and we see that locally. Energy is always big because it's a public concern, of course. Locally, medtech has always been strong in this area, which is good to see. And going on from that, well-being, we're seeing an awful lot of companies specializing more in just general well-being. I think we've come out of the COVID thing and having learned an awful lot about well-being and mental health. And for example, glamping, the whole glamping industry is growing quite rapidly as people take their well-being and health and mental health more serious, not just from a personal point of view, from a corporate point of view. Lots of companies are really interested in investing in their employees' well-being. So that's another area of growth we see.
And interesting you mentioned that, James. Maybe just kind of leading on from that a little bit, one of the things that COVID has given us as a sort of society, the ability to do is operate a little bit more remotely. What are you seeing with businesses around Portsmouth about how they are able to access talent and work with talent all over the country and indeed all over the world? Is this something that's happening, or is it something that actually there is a really fertile range of graduates and people coming out of apprenticeships who are able to satisfy locally? Is remote working something that people are benefiting from, or are local residents working for companies up in Scotland?
I think there's a bit of both. There is, certainly certain sectors where there are skill shortages, and where certain sectors are struggling to find the right skills that they need. Sometimes it depends on the type of business and how you operate. There's certainly some sectors that lend themselves, as you can see, on working at home, lend themselves to, be able to operate remotely, and that does give you the opportunity to perhaps, work over a broader basis, or, certainly around the world, etc. But there's certainly other sectors where you have to be in an office, in a factory, or certainly in face to face, because that's how that's what the business does. There's a range of skills interventions, and one of the things that's that we've just been successful is bidding with the Department for Education is for some skills bootcamp funding. And skills bootcamp funding is to address current skills needs. So it's about identifying and working with local businesses and the key part of a skills bootcamp is to ensure that the businesses feed into the content and the curation and the co-design of what it is they want and what it is they need. So rather than education coming forward saying this is what we're delivering, this is what it looks like, there is the opportunity for the businesses to help shape that, and then we can create the skills and the employ and the workforce that they need. So it's a responsive model. So I'd certainly say to the businesses on the call, look out for that coming shortly. Well worth getting engaged in that.
Yeah, and kind of following on from that a little bit. One of the things that we've been focusing on today is innovative businesses, and we've been talking about emerging sectors and new technologies, AI and the space sector and medical technologies. But Teresa, perhaps you could talk a little bit about how the growth of innovative businesses can really impact locally and regionally on other businesses. The more high-skilled jobs, the better the wages, the more people who are in the region who want more products and services for them to access. How does the growth of innovative industries impact on the wider communities?
So we would say that good growth in businesses and creation of good jobs has a huge impact on the region. So if you create a job that has got good welfare standards, high well-being, as Richard mentioned, then those members of staff, those employees, are likely to have good quality housing. Everything is, it's this sort of social impact that they have. The impact they have on their children, the communities that are around them. So growth companies creating more jobs that are of good quality, not just those high skilled jobs, but quality jobs from the bottom up, really does create a positive community, which is absolutely what we want. We're having jobs in the right place, making sure that we've got the infrastructure there to make jobs be deliverable, making sure the technology is there so people can work from home. I've disappeared. Sorry, something went on my screen, so I don't know whether everybody disappeared. So it's all about holistic growth. So like I say, growth businesses and innovation creates a really good wealth for the region, I would say.
Excellent. And just sort of starting to wrap up a little bit, just to James, Richard, and then to Teresa. We've heard a little bit about the future in the previous panel. Maybe we could sort of ground it a little bit more in the immediate future. We have got high inflation, we have got difficult situations financially from the growth in housing costs. Where do you see the major barriers to innovation over the next year or so, and what's your feelings about the kind of medium-term prospects for startups and entrepreneurs? Perhaps a massive question, but
that is a massive question. Where to start? Barriers. There's several barriers. Access to finance is probably the biggest barrier, but it's been sort of touched on by others as well, is the whole sort of sustainability, green, net zero, however you want to sort of position it as well. I think that's ever increasingly important for businesses of any size, and certainly for business to business, if you're looking to win business, whether that be through public procurement or with other larger businesses, having that record of sustainability, then green credentials as such, I think is really important. and for business owners to have an eye on how they're managing their own finances internally, and to be on top of that. I think Teresa alluded to it a little bit earlier, that sometimes that is perhaps something that people are a little bit scared of and step away from. But I think it's really important to be on top of that and get help as well, and ask for help. And any of us on this call, or anyone that's been on the whole of the call today, can certainly point people in or give advice on how to help with that as well.
Excellent. Richard, from your perspective, what's your kind of view on the next immediate and medium term for people just starting out on their journey?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I mean, looking around, we're still a very innovative nation, and we mustn't forget that. We still have quite a background and a culture of having a go at solving things, and that is still, I think that is very much with us. You only have to look at some of the big industries, and we're actually, I mean, aerospace, space, electric vehicles, we're still right up there in trying to solve those problems. So that's a cultural thing which has always been good in this country. What I think there is a concern, my background is design, and that there is a concern that with the digital age that we live in, we are losing some creativity. Now, I'm not sure whether that's true or not, but there are concerns that people, entrepreneurial people, must try and keep away from digital tools and habits in order to keep creative, which would be interesting. That's just a theory, but I can kind of understand that. As far as barriers, I think barriers to innovation haven't changed. As James said, well, finance will always be there, and confidence and protecting IP. But I would say that there's no better, in what I see of the southeast of England and other parts of the country I go to, there's no better place to be than the Portsmouth area if you do have the opportunity. There is a very, very strong university who are well set up and always have been at working with industry. There's a lot of local support. It's a thriving area, and if you can be motivated by that because you just happen to be in the Portsmouth area, then you should be. It really is an area which is thriving at the moment, and will do for years to come, I think.
Excellent, thank you. And Teresa, any kind of final thoughts from you on the immediate future for entrepreneurs and innovators?
I think it's really positive. I know we're in this current financial situation, but I think if we look forward and think about exactly what Richard said, the innovation that we've got in the area, the access to supply chains and the opportunities that are out there for businesses already is massive. And I think if I was to say anything, it's stick with it. Your idea has value, and ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask, any of colleagues on here will, if we don't know the answer ourselves, we know somebody who can point you in the right direction, and go down as many rabbit holes until you find the right answer. Keep trying, because I think we have the innovation ecosystem here already, and I think if we start celebrating it more and people and businesses start seeing that more, they'll realize that we are really successful already, and that success will generate success.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you all three of you. I think it was a really interesting insight into the broader range of support that's available, and some great insights. Funding is always, whenever we're discussing with people during their entrepreneurial journey, whether right at the beginning or scaling, funding is always something that comes up. But from the sounds of it, there's lots of opportunities to talk to people, and there's lots of people who can support you at different stages of your journey with your different needs. And maybe don't always sort of focus on the funding, but also think about your skills, think about the skills of your employees, and think about how you can fit with other organizations. Thank you very much to the panel. If we could just move on to the final slide from my side. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending today. I'm sorry that it wasn't in person down in Portsmouth. unfortunately, the train strikes, as I mentioned at the beginning, have put paid to our ability to travel, and due to the being at the end of the academic year, trying to arrange another date was unfortunately impossible. So thank you very much for joining online. All of the presentations will be made available to attendees afterwards. There's some fantastic links and guides, certainly in Jane's presentation. She's got loads of great links to some of the work that Portsmouth City Council are doing, and I suggest that's a really good first port of call. I know the work of Innovate UK Edge as well, and I think engaging with them is very helpful for entrepreneurs wherever they are in their journey, and they can really do help as well, but also the work of Solent LEP and Hampshire County Council as well. Thank you very much to Portsmouth University, to Jeremy for the presentation and also for the discussion afterwards. It's been really interesting to hear that from the perspective of the university, where there is emerging research base and emerging classes of graduates and postgraduates, that there's a real kind of joined up way of thinking about what is good about Portsmouth and what is going to be good in the future, and how things are going to be able to integrate. Yeah, thank you very much for attending, and yeah, that is it. Thank you.